Hey, read through the Word. Today is January 23rd, and today's lesson is called Theology Matters. And we are in Job chapter 16, verses 7 through 11. And here's what it says. It says, "O God, you have ground me down and devastated my family. As if to prove I've sinned, you've reduced me to skin and bones. My gaunt flesh testifies against me. God hates me and angrily tears me apart. He snaps his teeth at me and pierces me with his eyes. People jeer and laugh at me. They slap my cheek in contempt, and a mob gathers against me. God has handed me over to sinners. He has tossed me into the hands of the wicked." Oh, keep going all the way through the end of chapter 16. My eyes are red. We just want to smack Job. "My eyes are red with weeping. Dark shadows circle my eyes. Yet I done no wrong, and my prayer is pure. Poor me. Why is this happening?" And he goes all this. So, he does. Last week we talked about. He does get okay, I'm not quite getting this. I need someone to mediate between me and God, and we talked about that last year. Mediate between me and God. That's Jesus. So, but today you're like, this sounds like an odd lesson. No, it's not. I have now, the years at this point start to run together. So I always think, how in the world does Wendy keep it straight? As long as she's been doing this. But either last year or year before, we went a deep dive into Job. And because we all think that the book of Job is a book about suffering. It's not. It is actually about the sovereignty of God. And the book of Job is all about theology. You're like, theology, Lisa? Why you always got to pull the nerd stuff out? Because theology's for everybody. It's not just for people in seminary. It's for everybody. I read a quote the other day, and I can't remember who it was. I have to, if I find it later, I'll put it in the comments. That said, there was a time when you just it said there was a time when all your kids needed to know was the stories of the Bible. Now, if you don't connect the stories through theology and doctrine like we do, you miss the point. Theology is important. Theology is what we believe about God and how he relates to the universe he created. The word theology comes from Theos, which means God, logos, which means word or reason, and ology means the study of something. So biology bio means life, is the study of life. So all your ologies are a study of. So theology is the study of what we think about God. Theology explores what is true about God and what he says is true about the world, humanity, and history. I've got this quote that is from R.C. Sproul's book, Everyone's a Theologian. He says, and I tell my students this all the time. So we have new people with us right now, but my Bible class that I teach at school is juniors in high school. And our class is Theology and Apologetics. Our first semester was theology, and now we're getting into apologetics. And I use this with them all the time. And I said, Sproul says this as well. Everyone's a theologian. Not everyone's a good one. Everyone who has thought and belief about God. An atheist is a theologian. They have a thought about God. They think about God. What they think about God is false. But they're a theologian. So shouldn't there be good theologians? The purpose, so R.C. Sproul's quote is this, and I think this is why people look down on theology. Don't look down on theology. Theology is what we read in the Word and where it hits the reality in life. The purpose of theology is not to tickle our intellects, but to instruct us in the ways of God so that we can grow up into maturity and fullness of obedience to Him. That is why we engage in theology. That's why we do this. Because our theology drives everything we do. How do we treat every person made in God's image? I tell my students all the time, check your theology. Do you believe that people are made in the image of God? Then walk through Walmart and check yourself of how you judge people and what we think of people. And made image bearers of God. How do we live when faced with tragedy and suffering? I mean, that's what Job's showing us. The book of Job is showing us a man and his friends who have really bad theology. And a loving God who is sovereign and in control. And finally Job realizes, hey, my theology's bad. What I think about God is not true. I mean, look, read today what he says about God. God's beat me up. God doesn't like me. God, no, none of that is sound theology. I mean, so we look at a record of how do we face tragedy and suffering. Everybody says, like they have the patience of Job. People who say they have the patience of Job has not read the book. Because he whines constantly about it. Why did I do wrong? Why doesn't God like me? That's what he does. How do we approach everyday life? How do we handle the big events in life, good and bad? It all has to do with our theology. What do we believe about God? I'm going to make the case through every single lesson that we have that we need to get our thinking right and start looking at things through the lens of the Bible, everything in life. The Bible's not just held and this is my pocket for my faith and let me hold it here and it doesn't impact the rest of our life. Bad theology. Good theology. We want to be good theologians. Good theology aligns with the Word of God. That's why I say, so what does that look like? It looks like when we read the lesson and we read in the text and we ask that first question. What does this teach me about who God is and how He works? God is loving. God is just. God is merciful. God is kind. That's the lesson that's given in the story. The attributes and telling us who God is what is given in every account in all 66 books. It's for us to know Him and to make Him known. And so if we see that of what then, if I believe, because the Bible has told me so, that God is omnipresent, that He's everywhere, He sees things, He knows. You think about Hagar, He's the God who sees. That there is nothing on this that happens in the world that God does not know about. That God is sovereign, He's in control, which is what this book is going to show us. So if we look and see those, then if I know that about God, then how does that impact how I live my life? If I say I believe that God's everywhere at all times, then He is with me wherever, which that's going to show up as we watch the nation of Israel and they get sent into exile. Spoiler, way later on down the road. That's a lesson they have to learn. But then God's with me wherever I am. And He also sees and He knows. So I don't have to defend. I don't have to. Why should I be ugly when stuff happens? Why should I be mean to someone? God sees, God knows. Who am I putting first in life, me or him? I mean, so it impacts us. Theology is not just for your pastor or those people in seminary. Theology is for all believers. I want us to think about this. What we have in the book of Job is a record of a conversation of Job and his friends. A record of the theological discussion. When something goes bad in one of the guys' lives, and how everybody else chimes in about it. So, we like to throw Job's friends under the bus. I mean, Job, bad theology. He's got one that has some good theology. But the rest of them, so this is you. Instead of the book of Job, we have the book of whoever you are. And we have a record of you and your friends discussing something that's happened in your life. Recorded for posterity. Would it sound like this? Would it sound like this? Woe is me. Things are so bad. God's awful. That's not true. That's not a true statement. That's not a true theological statement. Nowhere in the Bible does it say such. There's nothing there that shows that is who God is. That's a God of your own making. That's called idolatry. If we recorded our conversations, would they show good theology or bad? God steps into the conversation a few times. And we'll talk more about how Job responds later. But I want us to think about that. Let the word inform my theology and not circumstances. This conversation between a group of friends has let the circumstances inform their theology instead of who God has proven himself to be. And that's something important because theology matters. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.